After years of delays, US electric vehicle maker Tesla has made its long-anticipated debut in India, the world's third largest auto market. Tesla opened its first showroom in Mumbai this week, with plans for another in Delhi. Spearheading Tesla's lineup is the Y model, retailing it in India for upwards of $70,000. Sales of Tesla EVs have fallen sharply this year as buyers around the world boycott the company over the political views of its CEO Elon Musk. Peter Wells is a professor of business and sustainability with the Centre for Automotive Industry Research at Cardiff Business School in the UK. Welcome to DW. Let's start with your thoughts on Tesla's entry into the Indian market.
Well, it's certainly a little bit late. I suppose better late than never. But I cannot imagine that the Indian market, whether or not Tesla does particularly well, is going to be enough to solve the problems that Tesla faces worldwide.
And is that let's expand on that then, because is that why Tesla has chosen now to go into India? Because it is damaged worldwide, or does it see India as a particularly valuable market?
Well, it's certainly the case that over the last year or so, the market for electric cars in India has really picked up. And maybe that's got to the point where Tesla feels it's worthwhile to try to make an entry and to make an initial foray into that market, admittedly at the premium end. Thus far, the market in India has largely been concentrated into the more affordable end of the market, the smaller vehicles, not least because there's a very high import tariff applied to cars being sold in that market but produced outside.
Yeah, tell us more then about the market for EVs in India, a country, of course, with some notable pollution problems.
Yes, and well, of course, India, as you mentioned earlier, is the third largest auto market in the world. But in terms of electric vehicles, it's not even in the top 10. And so there's an enormous potential there for that market to expand. And yes, they have some severe congestion problems, but also severe air quality problems, particularly at certain times of the year in the major cities like Delhi. So there is this huge incentive to develop electric vehicles, and there are all sorts of measures at both national level and state and city level to try to develop this market. At the moment, they haven't really had a strong enough middle-class market to really take on board and go with that market. It's just beginning to happen now. They're beginning to see those investments going in. And, of course, the charge points and all the rest of it are beginning to be developed. So it's early days. There's a huge potential. And, of course, in India at the moment, there's been a significant growth in the use of electric three-wheel vehicles and two-wheel vehicles. So contrary to other markets, there has been growth in that kind of segment. It's the cars that have been slow.
So the sector in India led by the middle-class market, and you mentioned a little earlier that the EV market, that's about the lower-priced vehicles. So who are the players? Is there an established market there? Are there established EV players in India?
Well, of course, India has long maintained an approach where they've tried to protect the domestic industry, and that's across the board, including electric vehicles. So you see that the major market player at the moment is Tata, Indian group, well established across a range of different industries. The second, however, is a joint venture between India and the Chinese company SIA. So we see that the structure of the market is changing quite rapidly in India. And around them, we see a number of other well-known players either importing into that market or, for some of them, actually quite active as producers. So, for example, Toyota, though it doesn't sell many pure electric vehicles, does sell a lot of hybrid vehicles in that market.
Tell us about this joint Indian-Chinese venture. Is that China's way of trying to get into the Indian market and India's way of saying, well, we need you because you're the world's biggest producer of these things, but we're worried about a flood of your cheap vehicles into our country?
Well, I think India's played a very cautious policy overall, and there remain concerns. Of course, a key concern is that China holds control over both those key minerals and the battery supply chain. And I think India has long been wary of that and concerned not to become too dependent upon China in a sense that makes them vulnerable to geopolitical risk, which would not be a comfortable place for the government to be in. So they have been cautious, but equally, the Indian government and some of the major players in India understand that they do have to embrace this transition that's going on around the world in the industry. It's not going to be a comfortable transition, not by any means, because India doesn't really have the natural resources to support it. But I think they understand now it has to happen. They're on their way. It will involve Chinese companies, but it will also involve others. So they have many European partners, for example.
Thanks for talking us through that, Professor. Professor Peter Wells from Cardiff Business School.